Friends and family, welcome to another episode of Uncomfortable Conversations with a Married Woman. In this episode, we're going to talk about deal breakers, okay? So grab a snack, grab a drink, and let's get into it. One of the things that I've realized in marriages is that before people get involved and get married, they don't usually talk about deal breakers. What is a deal breaker? A deal breaker is something that if and when it happens will cause a big shift in your relationship, okay? And it is something that we have to talk about, whether at the beginning of our marriage or preferably before we even get married. Inevitably, while you're dating or courting, there are conversations that help you know about your spouse's deal breakers. For instance, if you're talking about a friend, a friend of yours or a mutual friend, some situation happened and your spouse says, oh, if I were in that situation, I'd have left him, I'd have been gone. I am not dealing with that kind of thing. Right there, they've communicated to you a deal breaker, but did you hear it? Did you absorb it that way? Does that resonate with you? And will you remember it moving forward, that if I do this, they're gonna leave me? You know what I mean? A lot of times it's, okay, we're having a conversation, so it kind of goes in one ear and goes out the other. But it is very important to actually sit down and have that discussion. Sometimes in premarital counseling, these things will come up where, the pastor or whoever it is going to ask you some of these things, and you guys will, answer. And if you have conflicting answers, you have a discussion about it. But I think it goes deeper than that you actually have to memorialize in writing or in some way what these deal breakers are. Because in your marriage, if you're planning to be married for eternity, as in, as long as you both shall live, you want to be prepared and you want to lessen the impact of it in your marriage. Obviously, something that is a deal breaker is negative. It's seen as a negative thing. If it were positive, it wouldn't be called a deal breaker, right? Okay, so let's get into it. There are three things that I've seen that are deal breakers in marriages. I have seen them break up marriages. Number one is infidelity. Number two is the in-laws moving in. Number three is finances. These are the three top things that I have seen. If you know any others that I haven't mentioned, please let me know in the comments box. But these are the consistent ones that I've seen in most marriages that have ended. One of these things, one of these three, has caused that breakup. So when you guys have the discussion, you want to be very candid with one another. You have to be truthful. You have to let them know, the situation when it comes to what it does to you and why it's a deal breaker for you. If you watch my video about my baggage that I brought into my relationship, you will see exactly what my deal breakers are. When you talk about the deal breakers, so you have to talk about what the result is. That doesn't necessarily mean separation or divorce. You guys have to talk about it when the deal breaker is triggered, when it actually comes into effect. For infidelity, what you're going to do, here are some examples of things that I know people have done. If it is physical cheating, they can't be, well, I can't tell you what to do, but I'm just saying, if it is physical cheating, you don't know if your spouse used a condom or not. You don't know if the other person has any kinds of sexually transmitted diseases or not. I would advise you, get tested, get your spouse tested, number one. Number two, are you going to stay together? Even if you're not going to stay together, you need that STD test, because you need to know if there's something coming up, like, the last time you guys had an intimacy, and if you're going to experience one of these, STDs, if the other person had it. You have to know. Even if you're not going to stay together, you need to do that test. I would advise you 100,000% do it. Number two, I would suggest that you think about, is it something that you need counseling about, or your spouse needs counseling about, if you're deciding to stay together? Even if you choose not to stay together, I can tell you that it can scar you for life. I have seen it. It can scar you for life. So it's good to have some kind of counseling for it, okay? And then number three, as part of the deal, is it a deal breaker to the point where you actually separating or divorcing? Is it like a no, like, listen, we're not going there at all, and it's over the minute you do it. Know that it's over. So that's how you approach your deal breakers. That's the infidelity one, right? Again, in my other video, you'll see that we talked about emotional infidelity and physical infidelity. So you guys have to break that up. If it's one or the other, does it really matter? And how will you address it? And will it end your marriage or not? That's part of the stuff you have to talk about. The other thing is in-laws. I know several marriages where at some point an in-law has moved in. Cousin-in-law, brother-in-law, mother-in-law, father-in-law. I'm just saying, you know, auntie-in-law. And it's a difficult thing. I will tell you personally, there is nowhere that I lived. And again, you can, you know, refer to my earlier videos that tells you about my childhood, where by the age of 10, I had lived in 10 different homes. Everywhere I went, there were in-laws that lived there at some point, everywhere. So that to me is very normal. Very, very normal. To my husband, his mother was like my grandmother and like my aunties. Everybody's welcome, you know, in-laws, outlaws, you know, friends, whatever. If you need a place to stay, I got a place to stay. I'll help you out for however long you need, and then you go on your merry way. So my husband and I did not have a conversation about deal breakers. I assumed that since he lived through that with his parents, and I lived through that with mine, you know, and my aunties and my uncles, that it wasn't a big deal. In-laws can come and go whenever they want to, okay? Because we've lived through it, and I never heard him complain. I never heard him say, oh, it was terrible when they came. And so I assumed. You know what happens when you assume? And that did cause a situation in our marriage for sure. And for me, I feel my house is open. I'm one of those people that I want to help all the time. So come one, come all. I have no problem with, you know, family coming and going. His side, my side, I don't care. If you need something and I can help you with it, I will. Unfortunately, he didn't feel the same way. And I don't know if he said it and I didn't hear it, or if he didn't say it at all. But we definitely did not intentionally focus on that discussion when it comes to in-laws. I know that we talked about our families and how we were and how we grew up, but I never, you know, comprehended that, you know, he did not want in-laws living in his house. So that's all I'm going to say about that. So what does it mean then? Is it a deal breaker? Does it mean you don't allow anybody to come and live in your house at all who is an in-law? Or does it mean they can come for this much time and no more? What does that mean? Or is it the minute they come in, you're out? So you have to talk about it. So that's another deal breaker conversation that you must have. And then the third one that I've seen that happens that actually causes a lot of strife in relationships is the finances. A lot of people don't think about it or talk about it. And then you end up, oh, this person co-signed for a house, you know, for their friend or for their family, and that other person did the same, and before you know it, your credit score has plummeted and you're like, wait, what happened? And then, oh, I just co-signed for, you didn't tell me about it. You know, it's not fair, you didn't tell me about it. And then you realize you yourself, oh, I co-signed for a car for my cousin. And didn't say anything. So finances are a huge thing, huge thing. I believe that is the number one thing that breaks up marriages, is if I read it right. That is the number one thing. So you have to talk about it. So you guys sit down, talk about your deal breakers. It's never too late. Now is better than never. And talk about your deal breakers. What are the consequences? You know, how do you move forward from there if you move forward from there, okay? So that is all I have to say for this video. I hope it was useful. I hope you got good information from it. Remember, in order to have a good and happy marriage, you need to be respectful to yourself and your spouse. And you need to be kind to yourself and to your spouse. Until next time, have a blessed week.